So,
eternal
as St. Paul said to the first Christians in Corinth,
Yes.
so he echoes today. So we were always courageous, even though we know that even should something happen in this body, we've got a place not made with human hands, eternal, waiting for us in heaven.
Yes.
Beautiful things about the church, because we have delegations from all over the world. I think 12 crowned heads who are here.
Yes,
Massive procession of them coming in. We can talk more about them in a bit. Presidents, we have the most powerful man in the world, but this is also one of the great equalizing and beautiful things about the church, because we have with the pilgrims. We have perhaps as many as 250,000, likely more. Prince William, see how far it stretches.
That's right, Monsignor. How many people fit in this square?
So the folks from the Vatican always tell us 50,000 fit in the square when the square is totally
perhaps as many as 250,000.
That's the number that we have. And then if you stretch all the way down this straight street built in the 1920s, the Via della Conciliazione to symbolize the reconciliation between the Vatican City square when the square is totally the state of Italy. That's the number that we have. That we've got at least all the way down this straight street built in the 1920s. The Via della Conciliazione to symbolize able to do the reconciliation between the Vatican city-state, estimating the state of Italy. An hour before this Mass begins, at least a quarter of a million people in 60 minutes down this street.
And they do have those big, beautiful screens so that people can follow along and feel included, because it is kind of hard to see once you're down
just
the
how many
Via.
people are here an hour before this Mass begins. Let's see where we are in 60 minutes.
When they arrive, and they do have those big, beautiful screens so that people can follow along and feel included, because it is kind of hard to see once you're down the Via.
So we anticipate that this is going to be a very, very large crowd over the Tiber itself. But the pilgrims are here into what's called exactly the same reason that all the heads of state are city. And that is John Paul II's funeral mass, for example, and that's the power of the papacy, and that's the beauty of the church.
It's the enthusiasm that we saw. 6 o'clock in the morning, when those gates were open, people weren't walking in, they were running in to get their seat, to be able to make sure that they were going to have that as close as they could, because pilgrims, it's the enthusiasm that we saw. 6 o'clock in the morning, when those gates were open, people weren't walking in, they were depending on how we're going to get their seat, to be able to make sure that they were going to have that as close as they could, because
for anybody who was paying attention to the readings on Easter Sunday morning, the last day of Pope Francis'
or consolidating, depending on how we're going to describe what that looks like today.
Everything is about the running, but the running is super important. Mary Magdalene ran to the tomb and then ran back attention to the readings on Easter Sunday morning. St. John the Evangelist ran to the tomb, and the young man St. John's outpaced the old man St. Peter, but courteously waited for St. Mary Magdalene ran to the tomb and then ran back from the tomb. The church was always running. And then Saints Peter and St. John the Evangelist ran to the tomb, and the young man St. John to his spiritual son St. Timothy, the old man St. Peter, but courteously waited for St. Peter to enter the tomb first. The church was always running. And slow saunter. He finished the race, and he kept the faith to his spiritual son Saint Timothy. Francis was one who was always early. He was saying we never really saw Pope Francis run the good fight. Pope Francis was always it's not eager to get slow the things. Saunter. And so he showed that youthfulness, and he kept the spirit. And then Pope Francis was one who was always running in order to be able to pray this Mass, run. That type of enthusiasm, that type of urgency to get is something that's meant to characterize us as Christians of spirit.
Yeah,
and then I think it's quite fitting that people were running in order to be able to pray this Mass, because that type of enthusiasm, that type of urgency is something that's meant to characterize us as Christians.
That's right.
Francis was enthusiastic. He wanted to get to things.
He wanted to know that well from an audience with him. Yes,
exactly. But he also from a broadcasting standpoint that brings potential challenges too. But part of it was to your point.
Well, one of the things that we didn't get to show our audience last night was the closing of the casket, that private ceremony, and we do have some images of that. Can you describe a little bit of what the protocol is for that ceremony again, just so we can get into
one of the things that we didn't get to show our audience last night was the closing of the casket, that private ceremony, and we do have some images of that. Can you describe a little bit of what the protocol is for that ceremony again, just so we can get into an understanding of that moment, what it meant, its significance?
With many of the principal office led by the for the church Cardinal Camerlingo, who was an American, they had the ceremony in which there was Freya, there was the Cardinal Kevin Farrell, Irish-born, but naturalized American citizen.
Zechariah, which the church
with
prays every
many
morning.
of the principal office holders. There was the reading of what we call the Rogito. They had the ceremony in which there was prayer. There was the that I thought Benedictus incredibly beautifully calling Zechariah, which the church prays every morning. There were psalms.
Yes.
Those were the very first words. He's a pilgrim of hope, just like we are. List of Jubilee on the path that I thought began in heaven.
Matthew, tell us a little bit about that. Were there some phrases that particularly stuck out to you? Because we know this document will be sealed with him, and is that remembrance? It's that testament of who he was.
On the path to the fulfillment of our hope in heaven.
Matthew, tell us a little bit about that. Were there some phrases that particularly stuck out to you? Because we know this document will be sealed with him, and is that remembrance? It's that testament of who he was.
It's a testament of who he was. You can put it then it lays out practical terms. Almost programmatically what he did. In the sense that one phrase in generation, one passage that was really striking to me. This was his life. My translation of it. Always attentive to the last and those discarded by society. It lays out Francis, as soon as he was elected, chose to live in the Domus Sancta Marte because he could not do was really striking to me. This is my translation. From the first Holy Thursday, always attentive to the last and those discarded outside the Vatican, going each time to prison as soon as he was elected, chose to live in the Domus Sancta Marte. The priests he recommended that they always be ready to administer the sacrament of mercy. Holy Thursday, have the courage to leave the sacristies to go in search outside the Vatican, going and to keep the doors open of the church to welcome those eager for an encounter with the face of God. The priests he recommended that they always be ready to administer the sacrament of mercy. Little distillation. Have the courage to leave most of the themes to go in search of the lost sheep, and to keep the doors open of the church to welcome those eager
and the
for an
placing
encounter
of
with
that
the
of the
face of
top.
God the
What
Father.
do those beautiful, absolutely
so those
beautiful.
seals
a perfect little distillation
are
of
authenticators
most of the themes of Francis'
of his pontificate, and we just saw the seals
according to
the seals on the coffin and the placing
you'll have the
of
seal
that
of the
the
Cardinal
top.
Camerlengo.
What do those
You'll
seals
have the
mean?
seal. So those seals are
head
of the master ceremonies for the Vatican. That you'll have the seal of the Vicar of Rome. What is in there ran the diocese of Rome for the Bishop of Rome, who was the Holy Father. And so you'll have the seal of the Cardinal Camerlengo. Everything was done according to order of the head of the master ceremonies for the Vatican. You'll have the seal of the Vicar of Rome, hasn't been violated. Ran the diocese of Rome. For example, eventually there's a cause for canonization that basically said everything was done according to the stage where he would be blessed. They have to open up the casket. Us always to remember if there were, for example, hasn't been corruption there. If, for example, if they saw that the seal had never been broken, it just adds much greater credibility to the case that would come later. They have to open up pretty much everything historically going back centuries. In corruption, the seals of those office holders. If they saw that the seal had never been broken, I did this right. It just adds and much greater credibility to the case that would come later.
You used a great phrase that it's
pretty
a kind
much
of time
everything historically going back centuries would have the seals of those office holders to just say, I was here, I did this right.
And then included
it's a testimony for history.
The coins. Yeah, you used a great phrase. It's a kind of time capsule each year of the pontificate because each year in there it itself is sealed in a tube.
Yes,
those
we did see that. We showed the audience that. Yes.
And then included in there it is a historical testimony. So one coin for each year of the pontificate because each year in its own way minting for the record of what he did. Because many of these coins have particular interesting things. First, it is a historical for a particular event of the year.
It's remarkable to see our church truly
but it was also in its own
leaning
way,
into proof.
A record of what he did.
And the Bible is full of that, right? Most of the Gospels start with, I'm writing this down for you so that you might believe and pass it on to someone else so that they might believe. Truly, this is really what this is about as well.
We take history very seriously in the church.
And the Bible is full of that, right?
Christianity is an historical
Most of the Gospels start with, I'm writing this down for you so that you might believe and pass it on to someone else so that they might believe. This is really what this is about as well.
So we can't have salvation history without history. Seriously in the church. So the church has always putting those historical markers down. The eternal Son of God, seen with the coins, as we've seen with the seals, as we've seen with human history, as we're going to see with the booklets that have been prepared. So we can't have salvation history without history. And so the church has always put ourselves those historical markers down. While at the same time, as we've seen with the coins, as we've seen with the seals, trying to bring everybody beyond time. As we're going to see with the booklets that have been prepared for this funeral, which is tick-tock, minute to minute, in Kairos, which is an opportune moment, we're constantly going back and forth.